My channel here over at Subscribestar. So Capcom declares that simply translating games, I hate these people so much, developed under Japanese norms can end up hurting users. And ultimately the short version of this is the only power you have is in your wallet and in your messaging. It's not just like the thing with the left is people. The right will talk about this kind of stuff like Bud Light and Target and Capcom and Call of Duty. And the left will go, okay, so you don't want to buy it, but why do you have to talk about it? Well, that's the second part is, you vote with your wallet. The second part is communicating that message to other people to inform them that, oh, hey, all these companies, these are just filthy, evil parasites. And these are the reasons we're not buying from this company. You might want to consider it. That's the most important thing you can do, and you can spread that message using, social media. That's what the left wing is not happy about, is that people are talking about these kind of boycotts. And at some point it's like they go, oh, yikes, my guy, cry harder, touch grass, and all this kind of stuff. You go, it's not exactly boycotting, because that kind of implies that, oh, I want to go there, I want this movie, I want to watch this movie. After a while, at least with the movies and the comics, you look at them, you're like, oh, I don't even want to pirate it anymore. It's not even worth watching for free. Or you just, the taste turns to ashes in your mouth. You think about like Target or Anheuser-Busch or all these various other companies are like, oh, I don't even want anything to do with them. Like these are evil people. They're hurting people and they don't care. It's not boycotting Anheuser-Busch. It's like, I wouldn't want to be around anything to do with Anheuser-Busch. They're just evil, evil people. Anyway, so thank God we have these puppet masters these censors to make our decisions for us. Just kind of weird when adults need censors. Plot twist: adults don't need censors. I mean, kind of this is the ultimate argument of globalism versus nationalism, where the left hates free speech. They have to censor and deplatform. That open marketplace of ideas scares the pee out of them, because they can't compete in it, because they have bad ideas, and the only way they can get bad ideas across is through violence, that's why they're called bomb throwing Bolsheviks for a long time. So all this kind of stuff about needing like two men talking, they don't need a third man as a political commissar to censor them. The left wing they very much want to be that filter box. So all this kind of goes hand in hand with trusting the government and media, if you've been paying attention over the past few years, which far too many people over the past few years have shown that they really love the taste of those globalist flavored boots. They always thank God the right wing has finally abandoned that thin blue line stuff, because you realize like the cops will just do whatever their masters tell them to do. So that has finally been abandoned. But the left wing always shows this thing of like kissing the boot or something, and you look at them like, yeah, but your boot is like Bank of America, Chase Bank, Wells Fargo, Soros, Rothschilds, Larry Fink, BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard, CNN, MSN. You get the idea. It's like that's the left wing. Like, who do you think funds these left wing groups? Oh, it's Bank of America, but it's just Antifa, a pride float, BLM, funded by the banks. You're raging for the machine, aren't you? So over the past few years, people have learned that if you make people afraid, they will. What is it? It's not Occam's razor. It's what's that thing called? Hegelian dialectic, something like that. You make people afraid, you whip them up into a frenzy, and then you offer an out, but the out has got barbs attached to it. Like, you're just gonna have to give up a little bit of liberties, and we'll take this fear away. And so what everyone learns is that if you make people afraid, you can take away rights. And go like, wait a minute. So if the government and the media make you afraid to take away rights, what's to stop them from doing that in the future? That's why you don't trust the government and media. But for some reason, the left wing goes, oh no, we don't trust them. Of course we don't trust them. Oh, but they made us afraid, so we trusted them again. It's like, but that's not logical. That's what fear does. It turns off your logic. It's like, what is it? This guy saying Dune, fear is the mind killer? Yeah, absolutely. You're supposed to act even more logically when you're afraid, because if someone's making you afraid, they're manipulating you. It should be obvious, like to a teenager. Anyway, unfortunately, it was not too obvious to the Western world over the events of the past 3 years. You know what I'm talking about. I mean, it was obvious to me, and it was probably obvious to most of you who didn't fall for those machinations. So SJWs, hashtag pure. So SCWs are in complete control of America, and they've been making everything lame beyond imagination. They take something spicy and they turn it into just unflavored pasta, just hot water and noodles. It's like, well, it doesn't offend anybody. Yeah, it's better to have something spicy that's for a limited audience than something that's so completely milquetoast and unoffensive that it's just subsistence food. It's like this, it's the soy slop, the mental soy slop, the bread and circuses of video games, comics, and movies now. Honestly, that'd probably be a step up because what they're really doing is pushing this kind of far left wing um, to prop. Okay, so they're absolutely winning the culture war, mostly because the right wing isn't fighting it, or at least they weren't. Now they finally seem to be awakening and realizing that cancel culture really means slavery. If you're like, why does this small little subset of left wing have so much power? Well, that's a deep rabbit hole, but for Odyssey and Bit Chute. So what happened? Well, games and books and comics are made around the world. Obviously, they need to be translated into other languages to sell to that market, which shouldn't be a problem. One would assume you do your best to be as accurate as possible to maintain the flavor of the original. After all, the original source material is what got the whole thing started. Well, one would be wrong. They are transformative, not curative. They hate the originals. They hate the original messaging. If there's any nationalism in it, or if the author is a European male, or heaven forbid, Catholic, or some variety of Christian. So here you have stories from Japan where everything cool comes from Japan because they're not brainwashed. Why don't we, the SGWs look at this and go, why don't we take everything cool about Japan and just completely transform it until it sucks and subverted and corrupted bullshit propaganda cancer? And like normal people look at them and go like, Hans, get the flame wafer because these people this is why you have to gatekeep. These people will destroy everything they touch. And obviously, you're not going to gatekeep a billion-dollar company. You can vote with your feet, and you can spread a message online, like with the Call of Duty and this kind of stuff. Now, ultimately, that's a message. Like you don't have to. If you don't pay them, they go away or they change their behavior. It's like the money from millions of purchasers is the ultimate power, but also the messaging online to spread that message about what these people are doing. So the SJWs cannot allow like a Japanese story to be told unaltered because according to them it might not be politically correct. So it has to get transformed and warped in the function box, the 1984 box. So it comes out whinging about diversity as your strength, and you should sterilize your kids for social media dopamine boosts. I mean, it's just a part of me. I just can't believe all this kind of stuff is happening. So they rest in peace, Ted. So they take the story and apply the 1984 filter, and they make it unbelievably, painfully lame, which is a problem because people want to get the flavor of the Japanese story. That's why they're into Japanese stuff. Japanese manga is outselling American comics like 1,000 to 1. And then you look at American comics and you look at Japanese stuff, and you're like, oh well, no doubt, of course. Of course, Japanese stuff doesn't. And you put it next to each other, like America Chavez would probably be like peak cringe. The old Zach videos from a couple of years ago doing the America Chavez comics, which is amazing. And then you compare it to Japanese stuff, like, oh, these Japanese artists seem like they're really having a good time. I mean, they also want to sell the largest audience, but they're having fun while they're doing it. They're selling something that the customer will pay for. And then you look at, Soy Peter Parker and all this, a pregnant woman who's in a war fighting, just the ridiculous. Gee, blonde people bad yet again, every single time. Blonde people bad. Oh hey, I can't help but notice the blonde guy, the evil blonde guy, is wearing a little cross around his neck. Real subtle. Who's that? Who's that gay guy who wrote that comic about these two girls? It's about a ghost, ghosted in L.A. It's this a gay bald guy. I forget the guy's name. Where the good girl was this little this one girl who had a six-pointed star around her neck, and the other girl had the four-pointed star, otherwise known as a cross, around her neck. And those are the protagonists and antagonists. Obviously, Cena Grace is his name. Obviously, he was pitting the two against each other, and he just made the Christian just as evil as possible. And you're looking at Cena Grace, like, I think it went for 12 episodes, and it's a shame because the art was solid. It's like you had a really good potential. Like a lot of these people have really solid potentials in their stories, and then they just can't help but be so heavy-handed with oh hey, blonde Christian bad, and the other is good. Oh, real subtle. It's like these people, if they read comics in the industry, they think they're being subtle, but you don't understand. Like when you read 100 comics per month, and you look through these things, you're like, if you're in the industry, you need to be up on the industry, which means left wingers who write into stuff, they have to force themselves to read these comics because they would see the connection and be like, oh, this is tried, hackneyed, and overused. I mean, just way too heavy handed. Where it's this kind of anti-blonde, anti-Christian, anti-nation type of stuff. But you only see that if you're reading comics yourselves, and the left wingers who write comics are not reading left wing comics for good reason. They're friggin' horrible. So they don't know how heavy-handed they are. It's like, gee, another blonde gang in Idaho is the bad guys against Captain America or something. Anyway, so we don't want the cat ladies and soy boy stories. We want the original, not the pussy versions. Pussy versions don't sell. They know this. That's why they seek pivot points, positions of power and influence, even if it's all relative. It's why SJWs will take low-paying editor jobs for comics because they can warp and corrupt them to push their agenda. Heather Antos could have done anything else, and she would have made more money just in a wide range of positions. Instead, she deliberately chased after comics editing, even to bounce from industry to industry, to leave comics, go back to comics, for very little money, just so she could push this cancer. Women, and so like you have to crowdfund a computer, and it's like, wait a minute, you're in a comics industry. Something's wrong with this industry. Like plot twist, something is very, very wrong with that industry. And finally, people are, what is it, like 5 years after Comicsgate? I think no, maybe it's 5, 6, 7 years. I'm not exactly sure when Comicsgate started, but it's been more than 5 years now. And so finally, the mainstream industry is looking around like, the stuff's not selling, and we're underpaid. And they go like, no, if you're only selling 10,000 issues per year. Zach did a video where he's comparing like 1978, and they go, yeah, there's some Conan the Barbarian, which was kind of a mid-tier comic, was selling like 100,000 copies in 1978. And keep in mind, the population of the country was much smaller back then. Anyway, so women get into comics to change them so they can push their diversity poison. And in case you don't follow comics, they've ruined them to such an extent that Comicsgate was able to find fertile ground to grow. It's really an amazing set of conditions where your mainstream industry is so bad that a weed essentially can sprout up in the cracks, and it's like it turns out that the weed is not a weed; it's the vegetables you're after the whole time because the mainstream industry has gone to weeds. But the Japanese might be too based for the SJW sensibility, and the puppet masters can't allow that, so they have to shut it down. They're using this gaslight technique where they control the flow of perception and make you believe that there's only one narrative, the globalist one. They cannot allow diversity of thought because that allows a choice, and nobody's going to choose the globalist nonsense when better options exist, and any option is better than the SJW view of the world, which is pure cancer, where everything is pushing the same anti-white, anti-Christian, anti-male propaganda. It's just endless stuff. It's why the SJW stuff all looks basically like Rings of Power, which if you haven't seen, go sail the high seas, go watch an episode. I know you're thinking that's crazy. No, it's good to have your finger on the pulse of what they're pushing. And Rings of Power is a real good example of that. Just pick a random episode and watch the whole thing to see, and assuming you're familiar with Lord of the Rings, you see how, like, it's not Lord of the Rings, it's just transformative Bolshevik propaganda where the only use of intellectual properties to them of these stories is as a vector to push their agenda. And it's so heavy-handed. It is important to kind of watch this stuff every once in a while. I mean, you couldn't sit through all 8 episodes because it's that bad. I don't know. Call me crazy. I doubt anyone sat through all 8 episodes. I would like to talk to the person who sat and watched all 8 episodes and enjoyed them. So a mixture, you get stuff like Rings of Power, which is like a mixture of people from all over the world, and they do this with all this kind of stuff, and it's usually going to have a black female in charge. What was that other movie they did with The Last of Us? I think there's a rebellion group, and it's like 3 black chicks and 1 token white guy or something. It's like, yeah, that's plausible. Yeah, this is the nucleus. So you're rebellious. This is how this is totally believable. It's 3 POC chicks and the token white guy. Yeah, no, very similar to you. Totally, I'm on board with the story. Yeah. This is how organizations organize around women. I mean, women in general, not. Oh, they actually don't organize around women in general. It's usually men who organize most kind of things like that. Anyway, so it's why the SJW stuff all looks, the same wherever you go. It's like, hey, why are all these mixed groups of people together? How, it's like a United Colors of Bennington casting call. How does that work where you get people from around the world? It's like just Soros, Rothschild's, Larry Fink levels of global homogenization, which it is, but they're using social pressure to prevent you from noticing and saying something about it online, because they'll just call you istophobic, and the useful idiots will applaud like the trained sheep they are. They don't have to actually have an argument. They just need to say the magic trigger stimulus response words, because if they call somebody istophobic, then the sheep will respond. They've been brainwashed their whole lives for that stimulus response. And keep in mind that the curve of humanity, the bell curve, look at the shape of that. You'll realize that the people you're arguing with are to the left of that peak. They are terrified to stop and think and break that government and media propaganda. And they'll always have BLT stuff in the background, though, even though the audience isn't into it. It's like, so why are they trying to sell something that the audience isn't into? Because it's not about sales; it's about propaganda. And I mean, I'm going to keep saying that until the cows come home, because it's like, no, they're just chasing money. They're just chasing. No, they're not. No, they're not chasing money. It's a effing religion to them. You don't chase money. Like, think about, like, people think money is the primary motive for corporations, but you have to look at your own life. It's like, it's not even your primary motivation. It's enough to survive, but then after that, you're doing with stuff that you believe in. Why would you think a corporation? Well, they have a fiduciary duty to their shareholders. They don't give a shit. Obviously, they don't care about breaching the fiduciary duty, a duty of due care. This is a religion to them. Why wouldn't they organize like-minded people along their religion? They don't care about their fiduciary duty. Like, you're assigning character traits to them that they don't have. They're acting not in accord with your beliefs. You have to adjust your rationale. Anyway, everything to them is propaganda. You can't just enjoy a game or story with like all blonde Europeans in it, which, obviously I would love to see, because I have PTSD from Poxwalks, Purse Puppy, and Mary Sue's, to the point that I can't even watch them in a show or a comic or anything, which means you're not going to read anything or watch anything in the modern realm. So they absolutely can't allow in-group preferences to develop among your tribe, because then you might start to realize that you don't need SJWs and their silly beliefs at all, which is why on a small scale you have to gatekeep these filthy parasites out. And at the Capcom level, the Call of Duty type of stuff, or Anheuser-Busch or Target or whatever other companies out there, you just don't have to buy that kind of stuff. You can buy locally. And even if the local guy you're buying from is just as insanely left wing, like you're buying a local microbrew from a company that's just as insanely left wing, it still sends a message to Anheuser-Busch that or Target, or there's just no need to buy from those kind of companies. There's so many alternatives available. All we want is the original Japanese story with its unique flavor. Can we get that? No, because it might be too nationalist for you, and it might give you dangerous ideas that perhaps that's the better path. Plot twist, it is. The SJWs can't allow you to know that there are alternatives out there. Probably why they hated Comicsgate so much. They must have absolute control of they wanted to delete Zach. I mean, there were threats against him, against his family, against his kids, his half dozen wives around the world. They were fixated with violence against one guy in a Kia with a cell phone, with a comic on his lap, laughing at bad comics. And they wanted to wipe him out. Just a guy talking with like 50,000 YouTube subscribers. If they just ignored him, it's the same thing with the Trump effect. Like, if the media ignored Trump, he probably wouldn't have got elected. But they just couldn't help themselves. They couldn't help themselves with Zach. Like a guy in a Kia del Sol. It's like this weird little box car. It's kind of cool. It kind of looks like a car you should put a sunroof on and attach a 30 caliber to the roof or something in the very near future. Anyway, so they that's why I think they hated Comicsgate so much, because it showed that there was an alternative out there and people were willing to pay a premium. Zach's got a comic out there now. It's at like $220,000. Actually, looks pretty good. They want absolute control of the narrative. They don't want the possibility of alternatives out there, because their whole message has got to be blonde man bad, brown woman good, repeat ad nauseum. But what if we didn't tell a story? What if we went our own way? Well, then the SJWs, the Mark Wade types, will call up, what's it, Antarctic Press, I think? Or, what they do. Like, they'll try to shut you down, your business. They'll deplatform you. They'll go to your financial institutions, the banks, the payment processors, your crowdfunding sites. They'll go to anyone you're doing business with. They'll go to Yelp reviews online. They will try to destroy your life, your business. They will try to stop that message from getting out. They will do their level best to destroy you, because they can't allow the message that there are alternatives out there to this globalist, insane propaganda. They simply can't allow diversity of thought, because their ideas are so bad that they have to censor them. It's important to, of course, not pay for these games, but also to get online, spread awareness of what these filthy globalist vermin parasites are doing. Don't just be passive. You have to be actively anti-communist. The helicopters intensifies in the background. You got to use social media to spread the message of how evil they are. They had this campaign. It's something like how to be anti-racist. Whenever I see that on Twitter, I go, I'm absolutely anti-white racism. That is my concern right now, because no lives can matter until white lives matter, and they don't really have an argument to that. But I feel it's true. If you can appeal to emotion, then you put in appeal to emotion on the table. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe. Thanks again to Vegan and everyone else over on Subscribestar. Y'all are doing the Lord's work, and I'll see you guys next episode.